Hi, this is Tony Paradis from Food and Fitness Online. Welcome to my presentation, all about fat, how we get from fat to fit. During this presentation, I'll talk about why we get fat, how we get fat, dietary fat versus the fat we keep on our body composition and body types, and then finally, how to lose that extra body fat. Before we get started, a few things you should know about me. I'm a registered dietitian, certified personal trainer. I have a degree in nutrition sciences. I've lectured at Texas Women's University, Transform U Fitness, and Choice Training. I'm also the creator of Food and Fitness Online. So let's talk about the reasons why we get fat. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons is age. Maybe as we get older, our body loses the ability to metabolize calories as efficiently as it once could. Perhaps it's related to sedentary lifestyle. Do you find yourself sitting down most of the day? Are you watching TV or in front of the computer? The less active you are, the less calories you burn. Maybe it's a genetic issue. Some people are just naturally skinny, some are naturally big. Maybe there's nothing we can do about it. Or maybe those genetics are related to mentality. Some people like exercise, and some hate it. It could also be your environment. Maybe your family, your boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife is bringing home foods that are just too tempting to resist. And finally, perhaps it's muscle loss. As our muscles decrease in size or they atrophy, we lose that enhanced calorie burning effect of the extra muscle mass. Your parents have a lot to do with the kind of eating habits that you have now. Maybe your parents or your grandparents grew up in the Great Depression, where advice like, clean your plate and don't waste food, or there's starving children in China, Indonesia, or wherever, to get you to eat that extra food. Back then, it was a good thing. Today, 2/3 of all Americans are overweight and obese. Maybe joining the Clean Plate Club isn't so much of a good thing as it used to be. So now let's shift gears and talk about how we gain weight. Well, for a lot of us, gaining weight is easy. All you have to do is eat 3,500 extra calories, and that equals a pound of weight. That's 500 calories a day to equal a pound a week. But let's talk about what happens to all those extra calories. Here's a chart explaining all the different chemical and metabolic reactions happening at the cellular level in order to metabolize just proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. As you can see, there's a lot going on here. Luckily, I have a much simpler diagram here showing you all the important things that you need to know. Alright, so we get food from the diet, and that's either fats, carbohydrates, or proteins. Technically alcohols too, but I won't talk about that in the context of this discussion. Anyways, we can see here that fats will eventually be stored as fat stores. Carbohydrates can be turned into glucose, and excess will be stored as fat, and we can see that proteins are converted to amino acids and rearranged and eventually can enter the glucose pool and be stored as fats. So from this we can understand that fats, carbohydrates, and proteins in any amount, in any which way, if we're eating too many of them, they'll be stored as fat. There's no single evil ingredient. Fats aren't bad, carbohydrates aren't bad, proteins aren't bad. Gaining weight, and specifically gaining fat, comes from eating too much of any of these. Let's switch gears for a second and talk about the differences of dietary fat and body fat. Two very important points that I want to get across right now. Number one is that fat from foods do not turn into body fat directly. As we discussed in the previous slide, too much of any kind of calories will be converted to body fat. And the second point is that both dietary fats and body fat are necessary to survive. You have to have at least some of both. How much dietary fat and body fat should we have? Well, for dietary fat, I like to go with about 0.5 gram per pound of weight, or 0.5 gram per pound of lean body mass, if you're really overweight, and this usually comes to about 30% of total calorie intake. As for a body fat recommendation, how much should you have? Well, that really depends on your age and sex. When we want to lose fat, most of us say that we want to lose weight. But actually, we don't want to lose any of our muscle tissue because, as we talked about earlier, that is more metabolically active, helps us burn more calories, and it also helps us look better. That's why I like to use body composition. It's a better assessment of health, aesthetics, muscle and fat, and it can be used to calculate a metabolic rate. Now, your body composition is the relationship of fat to muscle in your body, and it can be measured using fat calipers, bioelectric impedance machines, or some stuff found in a laboratory that I won't get into. And sometimes, if we're exercising along with the dieting, we may gain weight, gaining muscle at the same rate that we're losing weight, losing fat. So there's 3 things that I like to track. Number 1, your weight on the scale, your girth, meaning the circumference around your belly, around your thighs, arms, and wherever you want to measure, as well as your body composition. Having these 3 tools in your belt will give you a better assessment of where you're at and where you end and help to keep you motivated along the way. So let me reiterate the importance of this issue by saying once again that fat loss does not equal weight loss. Weight loss can come from losing fat, muscle, water, or anything else. Fat loss is simply fat. You cannot only use pounds of the scale as a measurement of losing body fat. So let's talk about the best way to burn body fat. Should we do lots of cardio? Should we lift lots of weights? Or should we focus on our nutrition? Let's talk about burning extra body fat with exercise. Now let me start off by saying that most of us aren't trained athletes, so unless we're working out on a very regular basis, our body lacks the efficiency to burn as much calories per hour as somebody who is trained. A general rule of thumb is you'll burn about 5 calories per minute of exercise. So this means that with an hour of exercise, you'll burn about 300 calories. Multiply this by 7 days a week. If you want to work out for an hour a day, 7 times a week, you'll lose just over a pound of body fat. But who has time to work out for an hour every single day? Let's talk about losing fat by building extra muscle mass, and we can do this by lifting weights. Now, a lot of women think that if you start lifting weights, you're going to become big and bulky, especially if they're heavy weights. This simply is not true. First of all, you don't have enough testosterone to produce that kind of muscle mass, and second, you're not going to accidentally do what a lot of professional athletes spend their lifetime trying to achieve. Instead, lifting weights while you're losing fat means that you're going to lose the right kind of weight. You're going to preserve your lean body mass, and you're going to lose body fat. So what happens if you don't lift weights while you're trying to lose a significant amount of fat? Well, you get what I call the skinny fat body, meaning that you've lost a lot of weight, but you've also lost muscle along with your fat. So in the end, instead of being tight and toned, you're actually just smaller and still flabby, as opposed to if you had lifted weights and stimulated that lean body mass, stimulated your muscles enough to preserve themselves while you're breaking down body fat, then you get what I call skinny fit, meaning a tight, toned, muscular, but not bulky body. Now, I know I just covered a lot of information about fat loss, some of the science, and some of the reasons, but now I'm going to sum this up in the 4 rules for fat loss. Number 1 is you want to eat high protein foods. And the reason we do this is to preserve that lean body mass that we talked about. Protein is also very satiating, meaning that it's going to keep you full while you're on a diet. And it's also thermogenic, which means that it takes a little bit more energy to break down a gram of protein than it does the other nutrients. Therefore, we expend more calories just digesting it. Number 2 is you want to do resistance exercise at least 2 to 3 times per week. This will help stimulate that muscle and preserve that lean body mass so that in the end, we're not just getting skinny fat, we're going to be skinny fit. Also, track your calories. As I said earlier, too much of any nutrient equals excess body fat stored. So, you need to know how much you're getting in order to make those adjustments and see where you can go from there. Finally, do moderate amounts of cardio. As I said earlier, most of us only burn about 5 calories a minute. So that means that losing body fat with exercise alone becomes a ludicrous amount of commitment, about an hour a day working out very intensely. If you're going to be dieting and doing resistance exercise too, you only need to do moderate amounts. That's about 3 to 4 times a week, at least 20 minutes in a session. Well, that wraps things up for my talk about body fat. My name is Tony Paradis, registered dietitian and personal trainer. I appreciate you spending the time with me today to learn a little bit more about the science of nutrition and fitness. If you want more information, check out my website at www.foodandfitnessonline.com. I'll see you there.